They used to say the loneliest sound on the prairie was not the howl of a coyote or the whistle of the desert wind, but the silence of a warrior who had buried his heart with his wife. In the far stretch of old American frontier land, where red dust clung to boots and sunsets bled across endless skies, there lived a widowed Apache whose sorrow was deeper than the canyon cliffs. His name was Iron Hawk, a name spoken with respect in every trading post and around every tribal fire. Once he had been known for his strength in battle and the steady fire in his dark eyes. Now he was known for something else. He was alone. The land around him was wild and proud, much like the people who walked it. Skit trees twisted toward the sky, rivers cut silver lines through dry earth, and wooden towns stood stubbornly against the open plains. It was a time of horse hooves, iron wagons, and watchful eyes. Trust was rare. Love was rarer. Iron Hawk had not always carried such heavy silence. Years before, laughter had filled his lodge. His wife, Morning Star, had been gentle but fierce in spirit. She had loved him without fear, even when his enemies circled like wolves. When sickness came through the land one bitter winter, it took her quickly. No battle cry could chase it away. No warrior's strength could fight it. The day he laid her to rest beneath a cottonwood tree, something inside him turned to ash. The elders whispered that a warrior could survive arrows and bullets, but not an empty home. They urged him to remarry. An Apache household without a woman's warmth felt unfinished, like a drum without its skin. Yet Iron Hawk did not seek beauty or praise. He sought truth. He wanted to know if love could rise again from dust, or if it had died forever with Morning Star. So he did something no one expected from a man of his standing. Iron Hawk, respected hunter and landowner with horses strong as thunder, laid aside his fine weapons and his polished saddle. He left his broad silver bracelets in a carved chest and wore plain clothes instead. He let dust gather on his boots. He rode a lean horse instead of his prized stallion. In nearby settlements, both native and frontier towns, he spoke softly and offered only small trades. To strangers, he appeared to be a poor widower with little to his name. The old American towns were not kind to poor men seeking brides. Women with bright dresses and polished smiles often turned their eyes toward wealth. Fathers measured a man by the number of cattle he owned. Mothers counted coins before offering blessings. Iron Hawk watched carefully, saw how quickly doors closed when he spoke of having little land and no gold. He heard the polite refusals, the tight smiles, the murmured excuses. He did not grow angry. Instead, he grew certain. In the same dusty town lived a woman whose name carried both strength and sorrow. Her name was Silver Rain. She was not known for beauty that stopped men in their tracks. She was known for being different. Her skin bore faint scars from a childhood illness. Her eyes were sharp and thoughtful, not soft and shy. While other women embroidered bright patterns and dreamed of wealthy husbands, Silver Rain worked beside her aging father in their small trading store. She kept accounts better than most men and spoke her mind without trembling. Suitors had come for her sisters. They had come for her cousins. They rarely came for her. In quiet corners of the town, whispers followed her, too serious, too stubborn, not gentle enough. Some said her scars made her less pleasing. Others said she frightened men with the way she looked directly into their eyes. Rejected more than once, she had learned to stand tall alone. Yet beneath her steady strength, her heart still carried a fragile hope. She did not want riches. She wanted respect. The day Iron Hawk first stepped into her father's store, the wind pushed the door open with a long creak. Dust swirled around his boots. He looked travel-worn, his clothes plain, his posture quiet. Silver Rain noticed his hands first. Even without fine bracelets or polished blades, his hands told a story of power and restraint. This was not a weak man pretending to be strong. This was strength pretending to be small. "What do you seek?" she asked, her voice steady as river stone. "Only flour and salt," he replied. His voice was low, carrying the weight of distant thunder. Their eyes met for a brief moment. In that glance, something unspoken passed between them. It was not instant romance or dramatic fire. It was recognition. Two souls who understood loneliness without needing it explained. Over the following weeks, Iron Hawk returned often. He spoke little of himself. He mentioned no land, no horses, no respected name. He listened more than he talked. Silver Rain found herself telling him about the slow days at the store, about her father's failing health, about the way people judged too quickly. He did not offer pity. He offered presence. In town, others laughed quietly when they saw them speaking. A poor widower and the most rejected woman. It seemed fitting to them, almost amusing. Yet neither Iron Hawk nor Silver Rain cared for gossip. They spoke of simple things: the changing sky, the price of corn, the sound of coyotes at night. And in those simple words a deeper bond began to grow. Iron Hawk tested her gently. One evening he spoke of hardship, of having nothing but his hands and a small patch of land. He told her he could offer no gold, no grand lodge, no fine horses. He watched her closely, expecting at least a flicker of doubt. Instead, Silver Rain surprised him. "Wealth can vanish like morning fog," she said quietly, "but a steady heart remains. I do not fear a simple life, fear a false one." Her words struck him harder than any arrow ever had. For the first time since Morning Star's passing, Iron Hawk felt warmth stirring beneath the ashes of his grief. Could it be that love did not belong only to the beautiful or the fortunate? Could it rise in unexpected soil in the heart of a woman the world had overlooked? Yet secrets have weight, and Iron Hawk carried a heavy one. Beyond the town's edge, hidden in a valley guarded by red cliffs, stood his true home. Strong horses grazed there. His people respected him still. He was not a poor wanderer. He was a leader who had chosen to test the hearts of others. If Silver Rain learned the truth, would she feel deceived? Would she see his disguise as an insult rather than a shield? One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in fire, Silver Rain stepped outside the store to find Iron Hawk waiting. His expression was different, more intense. The wind tugged at his hair, and for a moment she sensed the warrior beneath the humble clothes. "There is something you must know," he began, his voice steady but heavy. Before he could finish, a group of riders appeared at the far end of the street. They were from his tribe, searching. They had recognized his horse. One of them called out his true title, loud enough for the entire town to hear. Silver Rain turned slowly toward him, confusion rising in her eyes. The dusty street fell silent. Whispers sparked like dry grass catching flame. The poor widower was not poor. The quiet man was not ordinary. Iron Hawk stood between two worlds, his truth exposed under the burning sky. And in that breathless moment, as Silver Rain's steady gaze searched his face for answers, only one question remained hanging in the heavy air. Would the most rejected woman still love him when she learned he had never been what he claimed to be? The rider's voice cut through the evening air like a sharp blade. "Chief Iron Hawk," he called again, his tone filled with urgency and respect. The word chief seemed to echo against the wooden walls of the town. Shop doors creaked open. Boots scraped against the dusty street. Every eye turned toward the man who had claimed to have nothing but a small patch of land and weary hands. Silver Rain did not step back, but something in her posture changed. The quiet warmth in her expression cooled into careful stillness. She looked at the riders, then back at him. "Chief," she repeated softly, as if testing the weight of the word. Iron Hawk's jaw tightened. The simple clothes he wore now felt heavier than armor. He had faced enemy warriors without fear, had stood against storms and famine, yet this moment unsettled him more than any battlefield. He had not planned for his truth to arrive on horseback in the center of town. The riders dismounted quickly. The tallest among them, Thunderwolf, bowed his head with deep respect. Thunderwolf was known among their people for his fierce loyalty and sharp instincts. "The council seeks you," he said. "There are matters of land and trade that cannot wait. We have searched the valleys and the river crossings. We did not know you had come here." Murmurs spread through the crowd like wind across dry grass. The poor widower was a tribal chief. The quiet customer who bought flour and salt was a man of land, horses, and authority. Some of the same townsfolk who had once dismissed him now stared with new calculation in their eyes. Silver Rain's father, Stone Ledger, stepped out of the store. Confusion etched across his weathered face. He had spent years guarding his daughter from mockery and false hope. Now he studied Iron Hawk carefully, as if measuring the truth behind his silence. Iron Hawk finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Return to the valley. I will come soon." Thunderwolf hesitated, glancing at Silver Rain and the watching townspeople. "The council grows restless," he warned quietly. "I said, I will come," Ironhawk repeated. The riders obeyed, mounting their horses and turning back toward the open plains. Dust rose behind them as they disappeared beyond the wooden buildings. Silence lingered long after they were gone. Silver Rain folded her arms gently, not in anger, but in protection. "You told me you owned little," she said. Her voice did not tremble, yet it carried a wound beneath its steadiness. "You said you had no Grand Lodge, no fine horses." "I spoke of what I was willing to offer," he answered carefully. "What you were willing to hide," she replied. The townspeople watched like spectators at a tense standoff. Some whispered that Silver Rain had trapped a powerful chief. Others muttered that Ironhawk had fooled her as easily as he fooled them. The air felt thick with judgment. Ironhawk turned to her fully, ignoring the crowd. "Walk with me," he said quietly. After a long pause, she nodded. They moved away from the center of town, toward the edge where the prairie stretched wide and golden. The sky had shifted into deep shades of crimson and violet. Crickets began their evening song. The world felt vast again, less crowded by curious eyes. For several moments, neither of them spoke. "You tested them," Silver Rain said at last. "You tested every woman who turned you away." "Yes." "To see who would choose you without wealth." "Yes." She looked at him directly. "And was I part of this test?" The question struck deep. Ironhawk did not answer immediately. He remembered the first day he saw her standing tall behind the store counter, unashamed of her scars, unbent by rejection. He remembered the way she listened without greed in her eyes. At first, yes, he had watched her as part of his quiet trial. It's somewhere between flour sacks and quiet conversations, his purpose had changed. "I came here seeking truth," he said slowly. "I did not expect to find you." Her expression softened for a brief second, then hardened again. "You should have trusted me with your truth." Trust. The word lingered between them like smoke. Ironhawk carried more than hidden wealth, carried grief, responsibility, and the weight of leadership. After Morningstar's death, he had seen how quickly people treated him differently. Some women approached him only because of his title. Families offered daughters with polite smiles and eager eyes. He had begun to wonder whether anyone would see the man beneath the chief. "I feared that if I stood before you as a leader, you would measure me as others did," he admitted. "I wanted to know if your heart was steady before I placed mine beside it." Silver Rain's gaze drifted toward the distant hills. The prairie wind lifted strands of her dark hair. "You speak of steady hearts," she said quietly.
"Ours."
"Yet you began ours with a shadow." He had no defense against that. Back in town, whispers had already begun to twist into something sharper. A wealthy chief seeking a bride among settlers would stir curiosity, envy, even tension. The frontier was fragile ground, balanced between trade and distrust. If people believed he had deceived them, the small peace between communities could strain. Thunderwolf's warning echoed in his mind. The council was restless. There were rumors of railroad agents pressing closer, of land disputes simmering beneath polite meetings. As Chief Ironhawk could not remain divided between two worlds for long. Silver Rain sensed the weight on his shoulders. "You are needed," she said. "Yes, then why stay here pretending to be less?" He looked at her with quiet intensity. "Because when I am here, I am not chief. I am simply a man who finds peace standing beside you." Her breath caught, just slightly. Romance did not burst between them in loud declarations. It lived in the small spaces. In the way he stood close enough to shield her from the wind, in the way she did not step away, in the understanding that both had known loneliness and did not wish to return to it. Yet love, like the frontier, was not simple. "There will be talk," she said. "People will say I chased your title, and mine will say I lowered myself for a town woman," he replied. "Does that trouble you?" He shook his head. "What troubles me is whether you can forgive the way we began." Silver Rain studied him carefully, searching for pride or mockery. She found neither. She saw a widowed Apache warrior who had lost once and feared losing again. She saw a leader who carried his people's future. And she saw a man who had chosen to appear poor rather than risk loving someone false. "You should have trusted me," she repeated softly. but I cannot deny what I felt before I knew your title." His heart stirred at her words, but the tension did not lift. It deepened. From the far end of town, a lone figure watched them from the shadows of a stable. His name was Black Flint, a traitor known for his sharp deals and sharper grudges. He had once tried to court Silver Rain and had been turned away with calm firmness. Now, seeing her walk beside a powerful chief, his pride burned. Black Flint understood opportunity when he saw it. A chief divided between love and duty could be weakened. A town suspicious of deception could be stirred. He slipped away quietly, already forming plans that would not favor either Ironhawk or Silver Rain, unaware of the brewing storm. Ironhawk reached for Silver Rain's hand. He did not grip it tightly. He simply let his fingers brush hers, offering connection without force. "I will return to the valley tomorrow," he said. "There are matters I must face, and I will remain here," she answered. The distance between their worlds suddenly felt wider than the prairie itself. As the last light faded from the sky, a question settled heavily between them. Could a widowed Apache chief and the most rejected woman in town stand together against gossip, pride, and rising conflict? Or would the truth that brought them closer become the very thing that pulled them apart? The wind carried no answer. It's only the promise that the next sunrise would not come quietly. Morning came heavy and colorless, as if the prairie itself sensed the strain between two worlds. A pale sun rose over the wooden rooftops, casting long shadows across the town. Word had traveled faster than the wind. By the time Silver Rain opened her father's store, people were already watching. Stone Ledger moved slowly behind the counter, his eyes thoughtful. "A chief," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "You have always chosen difficult roads, my daughter." Silver Rain kept her chin high. "I did not choose his title," she replied. "I chose his heart." Stone Ledger studied her carefully. He had seen her endure rejection without complaint. He had watched her swallow tears and return to her work with steady hands. Yet this was different. Loving a widowed Apache chief would not be a quiet matter. It would stir pride, suspicion, and old prejudices that never fully slept on the frontier. Outside, Black Flint stood near the water trough, speaking in low tones to two ranch hands. His eyes held a cold shine. "He deceived the whole town," he was saying. "If he can lie about being poor, what else can he lie about? Land agreements, trade promises." He planted seeds carefully, knowing suspicion grew well in dry soil. The ranch hands exchanged uneasy looks. The frontier survived on fragile trust between settlers and the Apache tribe. Trade routes passed through their lands. Horses were bought and sold. Grain and tools changed hands. If distrust deepened, business would suffer. Meanwhile, at the edge of the valley beyond town, Ironhawk rode alone toward his true home. The moment he crossed into the land of his people, his posture shifted. The quiet wanderer vanished. The chief returned. Thunderwolf waited near the council lodge, his expression stern. Beside him stood Red Canyon, an elder known for wisdom and blunt honesty. Their eyes followed Ironhawk as he dismounted. "You stayed longer than expected," Red Canyon said. "I had reason," Ironhawk replied. Thunderwolf crossed his arms. "The council hears whispers. Settlers speak of deception. Railroad agents press closer. They claim unused land will soon belong to those who can develop it." His voice carried the bitterness of a word learned from outsiders. Ironhawk's jaw tightened. The railroad meant change, meant strangers with contracts and surveys, with promises that often cost more than they gave. If tension rose between town and tribe, the agents would use it. "Risk appearing divided," Red Canyon warned. "A chief must be steady." Ironhawk felt the weight of that truth. Since Morning Star's passing, he had led with discipline and fairness. Yet for the first time, his heart pulled him in a direction that did not align neatly with council duties. "There is a woman," Thunderwolf said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes." Red Canyon's gaze sharpened. "A town woman." "Yes." Silence followed, thick and layered. Love was not forbidden, but it carried consequences. A chief's marriage could shape alliances or fracture them. "She is not greedy," Ironhawk said firmly. "She chose me when she believed I had nothing." Red Canyon nodded slowly. "And she may be stronger than most. But strength will be tested." Back in town, Silver Rain faced her own test. Customers entered the store with polite smiles that felt strained. Some asked pointed questions. "Will you move to the valley?" one woman inquired with false sweetness. "Or will he build a grand house here?" Silver Rain answered simply. "We have made no decisions." That was truth. They had not spoken of marriage openly since the revelation. Their last conversation lingered unfinished, suspended between trust and doubt. Later that afternoon, Black Flint stepped inside the store. He removed his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Silver Rain," he said smoothly. "I hear congratulations are in order." She met his gaze without warmth. "For what?" "For capturing a chief," he replied lightly. Quite an achievement for someone the town once overlooked. Stone Ledger stiffened behind the counter, but Silver Rain remained composed. "Careful, Black Flint," she said. "Words travel far on the prairie." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Do you truly believe a man like that seeks only love? Chiefs marry for alliances, for strength, for strategy." His words struck at her deepest fear. She had asked herself the same question in the quiet hours of night. Was she chosen for her heart, or simply because she happened to pass his test? Black Flint saw doubt flicker in her eyes and pressed on. "If the railroad offers him power, if the council demands unity, where will you stand? Beside him or beneath him?" She straightened. "You mistake him, do I?" His smile was thin. "Or do you?" He left her with that question, echoing louder than any insult. As evening approached, Ironhawk returned to town, this time riding his true stallion. The animal's strong frame and polished tack made his position undeniable. People paused in their tasks to watch him pass, respect mixed with caution. Silver Rain stepped outside when she heard the hooves. Their eyes met again, but the simplicity they once shared had shifted. Now the world watched. "I spoke with the council," he said. "They worry, as do your townsfolk." She nodded. Black Flint speaks loudly. Ironhawk's gaze darkened. "He seeks advantage." "Perhaps he seeks to protect his pride," she replied quietly. They walked toward the edge of town once more, needing distance from listening ears. The sky glowed with the colors of sunset, as if reminding them of the first evening their truth was exposed. "There are rumors of land disputes," he said. "Railroad agents promise prosperity to settlers. They suggest our valley is underused." Silver Rain frowned. "That land feeds your people, yes, but greed listens only to opportunity." A heavy understanding settled between them. If conflict over land grew, their relationship would become more than personal, would symbolize unity or betrayal depending on who judged it. "I do not want to be a weakness for you," she said. "You are not weakness," he answered firmly. "You are the only place I feel peace." Her breath softened at his words. The romance between them was no longer hidden in flour sacks and quiet glances. It stood in open air, vulnerable to storm. Yet even as they spoke, forces moved quietly around them. Black Flint met with a railroad representative named Steele Mercer at the edge of town. Steele Mercer wore fine boots and carried rolled maps beneath his arm. He listened carefully as Black Flint described tensions between tribe and settlers. If distrust grows, Black Flint suggested, land negotiations become easier. Steele Mercer's eyes gleamed. Division often clears the path for progress. Their handshake was subtle, but significant. That night, Silver Rain lay awake, staring at the wooden beams above her bed. She thought of Ironhawk's steady hands, of the grief he carried, of the way he looked at her as if she were not rejected but rare. She also thought of councils, railroads, and whispers. In the valley, Ironhawk stood outside his lodge, gazing at the same moon. Thunderwolf approached quietly. "Would you choose her if it cost you authority?" he asked. Ironhawk did not answer immediately. Authority had been his life since youth. Love had once been his anchor. Could he risk both again? The prairie wind moved through the grass, carrying uncertainty in every direction. Two worlds stood on fragile ground. A widowed Apache chief torn between duty and heart. A strong woman long rejected, now thrust into the center of a growing conflict. A jealous rival stirring doubt, railroad agents eyeing land with hungry ambition. And beneath it all, a love that had begun in honesty of spirit but was now surrounded by secrets, pride, and rising tension. The storm had not yet broken, but every sign in the sky warned that it was coming. The prairie did not warn before it changed. One day it lay quiet under a pale blue sky, and the next it carried a charge in the air that made even the horses restless. That restless feeling settled over both the valley and the town, as if the land itself understood that something decisive was approaching. Iron Hawk felt it first in the council lodge. Red Canyon placed a folded paper on the low wooden table between them. It bore the mark of Steele, Mercer, and the railroad company. The offer was written in careful language, promising partnership, prosperity, and protection. In return, it requested access to a stretch of valley land near the river. "They claim it is a small portion," Thunderwolf said, his voice tight. "But that river feeds half our winter crops." Iron Hawk read the paper slowly. The words were smooth, almost respectful, yet he could see what lay beneath them. Control did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces. They spoke with town leaders first, Red Canyon added. Black Flint stood beside Steele Mercer during the meeting. Iron Hawk's eyes darkened. Pieces were aligning in a pattern he did not like. In town, Silver Rain felt the same shift. Stone Ledger returned from a gathering near the church hall with worry carved deep into his face. "They say partnership with the railroad will bring growth," he told her. "Jobs, new businesses, protection from harsher winters, and the valley?" she asked quietly. Stone Ledger hesitated. "Some believe the tribe will resist. Others say the chief will agree for the sake of peace." Silver Rain knew better. Iron Hawk would not trade his people's lifeline for promises on paper. But she also knew pressure could twist even the strongest resolve. That evening, Black Flint stood on a wooden crate outside the saloon, speaking loudly enough for a small crowd to gather. "We cannot cling to the past," he declared. "The old ways are fading. The railroad is the future. We must choose progress over pride." His gaze slid toward Silver Rain when he saw her watching from across the street. "And we must ask whether our town's interests are being compromised by private attachments." The implication hung heavy in the air. Few heads turned toward her. She did not lower her eyes. "Progress built on broken trust will not stand long," she called back calmly. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Black Flint smiled thinly. "Then let us see where loyalties truly lie." Word reached the valley before sunset. Thunderwolf paced near the council fire. "They will try to force a decision," he warned. "Settlers believe you stand between them and prosperity. Anger will rise." Iron Hawk stood tall, but the weight on his shoulders had grown heavier. Love had once felt like a quiet blessing. Now it was being pulled into the center of a land dispute that could fracture years of fragile peace. That night, unable to remain apart, he rode to town under the cover of darkness. Silver Rain was waiting outside the store, as if she had sensed he would come. "They are pushing hard," she said before he could speak. They walked beyond the last fence post, into the open stretch where prairie grass brushed against their boots. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the land that both sides claimed to value. "If you refuse," she said softly, "they will say you deny them opportunity." "If I accept, I'd betray my people," he replied. She stopped walking and faced him fully. "And what of us?" The question struck deeper than any council debate. Their love, once simple and steady, now felt surrounded by fire. If he chose his people, would she be seen as enemy by her own town? If he sought compromise, would his tribe see weakness born from affection? "I will not lose you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You may not have that choice," she answered honestly. For a moment neither spoke. The wind moved between them, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant rain. "I was rejected all my life," Silver Rain continued quietly. "Not for who I am inside, but for how others judged me. I will not let fear decide my future again. If loving you means standing in the storm, then I will stand." Her courage stirred something fierce in him. This was not a woman chasing status. This was strength equal to his own. But even as their resolve deepened, the storm gathered faster than they expected. 2 days later, Still Mercer arrived in town with official papers, and a small group of armed guards meant more for show than threat. He requested a joint meeting between town leaders and the Apache Council at the edge of the valley. The decision would be discussed openly. Black Flint spread word that this was a historic moment. "We settled this now," he told anyone who would listen. No more hiding behind silence. The day of the meeting dawned hot and cloudless. Settlers gathered on one side of the clearing, tribal members on the other. The space between them felt narrow, despite the wide land. Iron Hawk stood at the front of his people, his posture strong, his presence undeniable. Silver Rain stood beside Stone Ledger among the townsfolk. Their eyes met across the divide, a silent thread connecting them. Steel Mercer unrolled his maps with careful precision. He spoke of expansion, of trains crossing the horizon, of shared profit and modern growth. His voice carried confidence, almost charm. When he finished, Black Flint stepped forward. "Chief Ironhawk," he called, "will you stand with progress, or will you cling to isolation?" A murmur rose on both sides. Ironhawk stepped into the center space. The sun beat down on his shoulders, but his gaze remained steady. "The valley is not unused," he said clearly. "It feeds families. It holds graves of ancestors. It carries our history." Steel Mercer smiled politely. "And we respect that history, which is why we offer partnership, not removal." "Partnership often begins with equal words and ends with unequal power," Thunderwolf muttered behind him. Tension tightened like a drawn bow. Silver Rain felt her heart pound. She could see anger flickering in some settlers' eyes. She could see suspicion in some tribal faces when they glanced toward her. Black Flint seized the moment. "Perhaps the chief hesitates because his heart is divided," he said loudly. "Perhaps he fears disappointing someone special." Gasps and whispers followed. Silver Rain stepped forward without thinking. "Do not use me as a weapon," she said firmly. Her voice rang clear across the clearing. All eyes turned to her. Steel Mercer's gaze sharpened. "And who might you be?" "Someone who believes peace cannot be built on pressure," she replied. Ironhawk felt pride and fear mix within him. Her courage placed her directly in the line of judgment. The air seemed to vibrate with unspoken threats. Settlers shifted uneasily. Tribal warriors stiffened. Then, from the distant ridge, a line of dark clouds began to gather. Thunder rolled faintly, as if the sky itself mirrored the rising conflict below. Steel Mercer folded his maps slowly. "We will have an answer," he said. Every heartbeat felt louder than the last. Ironhawk stood between duty and desire, between land and love. Silver Rain stood between loyalty to her town and loyalty to her heart. The valley waited. The town held its breath. The widowed Apache chief who once posed as poor now faced a choice that could shape every future sunrise. And as the first crack of thunder split the sky, the moment of decision moved closer, heavy and unstoppable. The crack of thunder rolled across the valley, deep and commanding, as if the land itself demanded honesty. Dust swirled at the center of the clearing where Iron Hawk stood between two worlds. The widowed Apache chief, who had once posed as poor, now faced the moment that would define his legacy, his leadership, and his love. He lifted his head, letting the silence stretch long enough for every restless breath to settle. "I will answer," Ironhawk said, his voice steady and clear. "But not with fear, and not with division." Steel Mercer folded his arms, confident that pressure would bend any man. Black Flint watched with sharp anticipation, certain that doubt would crack even the strongest resolve. Ironhawk turned first to his people. "This valley is our home. It feeds our children. It holds the stories of our ancestors. No map can measure its worth." Thunderwolf's shoulders eased slightly. Red Canyon's wise eyes gleamed with approval. Then Ironhawk faced the settlers. "But I do not deny change. I do not deny that the world beyond these plains is moving forward. Trade, partnership, and growth can exist without theft or deception." Steel Mercer raised an eyebrow. "And you agree to partnership?" "I agree to fair negotiation," Ironhawk replied. "Not surrender, not pressure, not contracts drawn in haste." A murmur moved through the settlers. Some looked relieved, others uncertain. Black Flint stepped forward quickly. "Fair negotiation is delay," he argued. "The railroad will not wait forever." Silver Rain's voice rose again, calm but firm. "Then let it be known that progress built on respect lasts longer than progress forced through fear." Her words landed differently now. She was no longer seen as a rejected woman clinging to a powerful man. She stood as a bridge between both sides, her strength undeniable. Steel Mercer studied the crowd. The tension he had hoped to exploit had shifted. This was no longer a divided gathering. It was a united front, demanding fairness. "What do you propose?" Steele Mercer asked at last. Ironhawk did not hesitate. A council of equal voices, tribal elders and town leaders together. Any use of land will protect the river and crops. Any rail line must run along the outer ridge, not through the heart of the valley. Trade agreements will benefit both communities. Steele Mercer calculated silently. The railroad wanted access, but it also wanted stability. Conflict would cost more than compromise. And if we refuse, Black Flint pressed. Ironhawk's gaze sharpened. Then we refuse together. The valley and the town. The words hung in the air, powerful and clear.
Ow!
Silver Rain felt her chest tighten with emotion. In that moment, he had not chosen one side over the other. He had chosen unity. Stone Ledger stepped forward beside his daughter. "We will not support any agreement that harms those who have traded honestly with us for years," he declared. "The river feeds us all." One by one, other settlers nodded. Farmers who relied on Apache horses, shopkeepers who depended on tribal grain. The fragile trust that once seemed ready to break now stood firmer than before. Black Flint's expression darkened. His plan to stir division was slipping away. "You risk losing opportunity," he warned. Silver Rain turned toward him, her voice steady but compassionate. "Opportunity that destroys trust is not opportunity. It is greed." The storm clouds overhead finally released a gentle rain, soft and steady. It cooled the dust and washed the tension from the air. Steele Mercer exhaled slowly. "Very well," he said. "A joint council, fair negotiation. We will return in 2 weeks with revised terms." He extended his hand toward Ironhawk. After a brief pause, Ironhawk clasped it firmly. It was not surrender. It was balance. As the gathering dispersed, whispers shifted in tone. The widowed Apache chief who had once posed as poor was now seen as something more powerful than wealthy. He was seen as honorable. Black Flint lingered near the edge of the clearing. Thunderwolf approached him quietly. "Ambition without wisdom leads to loneliness," Thunderwolf said softly. Black Flint looked away, pride wounded but not broken. Whether he would learn from this moment remained uncertain, but his influence had weakened. The rain continued lightly as Ironhawk crossed the clearing towards Silver Rain. No crowd stood between them now. "You stood beside me," he said, his voice lower, filled with gratitude. "I did not stand behind you," she corrected gently. "I stood with you." He smiled, a rare and unguarded expression that softened the strength in his features. "You were never rejected," he said. "The world simply failed to recognize your worth." Her eyes glistened, not from sadness but from release. "And you were never truly poor," she replied. "You only carried your wealth where it mattered." Stone Ledger approached them, placing a steady hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Chief Ironhawk," he said respectfully, "if your intentions remain honorable, you have my blessing." Ironhawk bowed his head slightly. "They do." In the weeks that followed, the joint council met beneath the cottonwood trees by the river. Red Canyon and Stone Ledger sat side by side. Thunderwolf and respected town elders debated with Steele Mercer's representatives. Maps were adjusted. Boundaries were marked carefully. The rail line was agreed to skirt the valley rather than cut through it. Trade routes were strengthened instead of broken. The agreement became known as the Valley Accord, a rare example of cooperation between frontier settlers and an Apache tribe. It was not perfect, but it was fair. Through it all, Ironhawk and Silver Rain's bond deepened. Their love was no longer hidden in quiet store visits or secret walks under moonlight. It had been tested by suspicion, land disputes, jealousy, and fear. It had endured. On a warm evening beneath a wide golden sky, Ironhawk led Silver Rain to the cottonwood tree where Morning Star had been laid to rest. He stood silently for a moment, honoring the past that shaped him. "I once believed my heart had been buried here," he said quietly. "But love does not die when loss comes. It waits." Silver Rain squeezed his hand gently. Sometimes it arrives in unexpected form. He knelt before her, not as a chief commanding respect, but as a man offering devotion. "Silver Rain, will you walk beside me, as my wife, as partner in leadership and in life?" She did not hesitate. Yes. Their wedding joined both communities. Tribal drums echoed alongside frontier fiddles. Settlers and Apache families shared food by the river. Children ran freely across land that had nearly become a battlefield. Black Flint watched from a distance, thoughtful and quieter than before. Even he could not deny the strength of what had been built. As the sun set that evening, Iron Hawk and Silver Rain stood hand in hand, looking over the valley that had nearly divided them. Apache, who once posed as poor, had found something greater than wealth. The most rejected woman had become the heart of unity between two worlds. The prairie wind moved gently through the grass, carrying not tension but peace. And in that vast old American landscape, where love and leadership had been tested by fire, a new story began.